How does a minor league baseball player practice gratitude and patience when waiting to be called up to the majors? I had the opportunity to speak with Blue Jays top prospect Alan Roden about these subjects and much more in this episode of Iggy Sports Talk.
Hold up. Wait until the whole team show up.
Welcome
Yeah.
back
I'ma
into
give
Iggy
a nigga
Sports
key
Talk. I'm your
props.
host,
Yeah.
Jakey Zuzuki, or Iggy for short. I want to thank you so much for tuning into this episode. If this is your first time watching or listening to Iggy Sports Talk, in each and every single episode, I try to look at the deeper aspects of sports and life. And in this episode, I spoke with Blue Jays top prospect Alan Roden about the mental aspects of being a minor leaguer, as well as the ins and outs of how to try and stay present when you are in the minors and waiting to be called up, and how to have a routine that still reminds you that you are a human being. And a little bit of insight on who Alan Roden is. He is a third round pick by the Toronto Blue Jays from the 2022 MLB draft out of Creighton University. And the 24-year-old is currently playing for the New Hampshire Fisher Cats in his third season of professional baseball. But the biggest thing that I really enjoyed about my conversation with Alan was the opportunity to really pick his brain about how he looks at the game of baseball on the mental side and the ups and downs of being a minor league baseball player and how that can at times affect him mentally. And I hope that you're able to take something out of this conversation. So now let's get into it. Alan, I just want to start off, obviously we're here at Northeast Delta Dental Stadium playing for the New Hampshire Fisher Cats, but outside of baseball, like what are some of your passions? And if you weren't playing baseball, what's something that you think that you'd be doing?
Yeah, so my whole life, academics was a huge part of my life. Both of my parents are professors, and so obviously they've instilled, a passion and, dedication to academics. And so, basically for my whole life, it's been, school and baseball, and now it's just baseball. But if I wasn't playing, I'd probably still be in school, working on a PhD in physics. That's what my degree was for my undergrad, and I took a lot of pride in that, and it's something that I was really passionate about. So if I wasn't playing, I'd probably be in some classroom somewhere trying to figure out how to do some math problem that I have no idea how to do. So, yeah.
Nice. And especially with the minor league grind, playing 5 to 6 days a week, how do you really try and disconnect and, leave the on-field stuff on the field, and then when you get back to the hotel or your apartment, really try and just be a human being?
Yeah, it's kind of one of those things that everyone needs to figure out for themselves, because you're totally right. Like if you take the field home with you, it's going to be a long day, long night, and then when you get to the field the next day, it's like you never left, right? So figuring out how to separate yourself and leave the game, leave whatever happened at the field that day is really important. And specific things that I do, it's really just about being intentional. And being like, okay, whether it was good or bad, taking a moment in the locker room or whatever time you have when you're still at the field to be like, okay, that was it. And then when you leave, you step out of the stadium, you're just a person, and whatever happened that night is gone.
Yeah, and I think, trying to learn from those experiences. And, I don't know if you saw the interview with Pete Fairbanks a few days ago. He's like, I'm going to give myself maybe like 10 minutes just to soak and then, go on to the next day. And I think especially, with life or with baseball, not allowing those external things to fully deter just your regular life. And, I read that you brought up over this offseason, a swing change and not allowing superstition or the overthinking about it in season to get in your head or, stop you from wanting to shift, a change that can help you in the long run. So whether it's with your swing or just like anything else on the field, how do you not allow the superstition to get in your head and deter you from just trying to help yourself out for the long run?
Yeah, I think a big thing is not allowing current success or superstitious about your swing and not preventing yourself from continuing to get better because what you're doing now is good enough, is bringing some sort of success. And so I think that's kind of where I was going with that thought is like, I'm not going to let any current success deter me from continuing to be honest with myself and bringing upon some changes that could benefit me in the long run, even if it might, cause some, trouble in the short term. So, yeah, and So superstition is such a funny thing in baseball, right? Because you play so much that you can kind of get caught up in like, oh well, I wore this specific shorts pre-game, and so whatever, blah blah blah, and so those little things kind of keep you going throughout the day, and it's like that's great and all. I do that as much as the next guy, but at the end of the day, it probably doesn't mean a whole lot. So it's like you gotta kind of allow yourself to do it a little bit, but then at the same time, keep yourself in check.
And with some of those changes, patience is a big thing, not, getting in your head if it doesn't come in a snap of a finger. And, with that, with any type of change that you have in your game, how do you try to practice that patience and not, get hard on yourself in those aspects?
Yeah, it's really just about playing the long game. It's about, baseball is, you need such a large sample size to really get a grasp on whether something's working or not. And you can't take, just like if you can't take success one day, just because you're successful one day doesn't mean you're going to be successful the next day, and just because you failed one day doesn't mean you're going to fail the next day. And so especially when you're going through a swing change or continuing to try to grow and develop, you can't take the small sample as end all be all, and you just have to keep grinding away and take things with a grain of salt.
With that patience, like I said in the intro, in AA, you've rose through the ranks, but I bet there's parts of you throughout your journey where you maybe feel like you deserve to get called up, or there's an itch of maybe I should be at the next level. And I'm curious, from a mental side, how do you not get too ahead of yourself, or get frustrated with your current situation in those types of aspects of wanting to get caught up?
Yeah, just keeping yourself in the present, and I think that really is kind of the underlying theme about everything that we've talked about so far, is like keeping yourself in the present, in the moment. And it's like, what do I have today? What's on my plate for today, and what am I dealing with today? And not looking too far ahead into the future, or trying to pay attention to the people ahead of you or anything like that. And it's the same thing where it's like, I don't want to take anything from the field home. I want to live in the present when I'm at home and be a person at home. It's the same thing where it's like, I don't want to bog myself down with worrying about what other people are doing or where I stand or, anything like that. And it's just about dealing with what I have on my plate today, trying to go out and compete today, and then whatever something comes, it'll come.
Yeah, and you hear a lot of people speak about, being where your feet are. And I think gratitude kind of plays a big part in that too, of just being grateful for where you are at, and that you are in AA, you are playing a child's game for a job, you know what I mean? And how do you try to practice that gratitude on a daily basis?
It's just about really being intentional. There's no other way around it. And it's a constant reminder, it's a daily reminder of keeping yourself in check, not getting too big for your britches, not thinking that you're bigger than anyone else. It's being, like you said, being grateful for where you are. Like, we do get to play a game for our job, and that's pretty cool. At the end of the day, it's a really neat thing, and so just being grateful at every moment. And it's hard. It's hard to do that every single day, but I think that the guys that are able to figure out how that works for them, how they are able to get to that point, those are the guys that are happier, have more fun, that get to be themselves when they're not at the field. It all plays into that.
And throughout your pro career so far, you've been in single A, high A, and now in double A. I bet there's been some veterans that maybe have taken you under their wing, or have given you some advice to maybe make the process a little bit smoother. I'm curious if there's anything that any of those guys have said that still sticks to you to this day.
Yeah, it's hard to think of anything specific, but in big league camp this year, obviously got to spend some time with some of the veterans of the big league club, and they really just echo the same type of thing, where it's like, it's a grind, it's a daily thing, and a big thing that they always talk about is routines, and so finding yourself in a daily routine, whether it's it's the baseball routine stuff too, but you can think about routines too as a person, like how you start your day, how you end your day, what are the things that you do throughout the day that remind yourself that you're a human and not a baseball player, and so I think stuff like that is something that's really stuck with me, and it's something you always have to keep working on, and just being grateful and routinely grateful. I think it's a good way to put it.
Yeah, coaches play a big role as well. And, I heard you speak about your Creighton head coach in interviews, speaking about how, the advice that he gave you of, not being afraid to put your all in something. And I
Oh
think
yeah.
there's a lot of times when people think about a goal or a dream they may have, they think about the external voices of parents or stuff like their teachers and, what it takes to get there. But how do you really try to practice that advice that that coach gave to you on a daily basis?
Yeah, I mean, just an incredible piece of advice where it's like, I mean, yeah, I'll just rephrase it. It's like, so many people prevent themselves from achieving their goal because they're afraid of giving it their all and then having it not work out. And it's sometimes an unconscious thing too, and it's something you have to live out. You just know deep down that you're going to give it your all, and what does that look like? It's hard to know exactly what that looks like on a daily basis. It's like, okay, yeah, I could play really hard on the field and work really hard in the cages and stuff like that, and like that's good, but it's more about like sticking with it when it's hard and keeping yourself balanced when it's going really good. And I think that's what it means to be giving it your all and not being afraid to give it your all. I think everything plays into that, and baseball is such a mental game where you have to, yeah, the physical stuff on the field happens and it plays itself out, but it's that mental, that's the differentiator, and so I think that's the separator.
And then one last thing for you, like you said, not only in baseball is there a roller coaster, but life as well. And you brought up some of those downtimes or even some of those failures that you can get. And I'm curious from a advice to your younger self, outlook during some of those lower points where you are at now. What advice would you give to that younger self?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I mean, I would just, I mean, I think about my first 2 years in college, and I didn't play at all those first 2 years, and it was hard for me, and um, like didn't always have the long perspective in mind, and I never had in my wildest dreams would have thought that I would be right here, right now, in those at that time, and so it's just like, just keep being you, and keep doing the things that you're passionate in, and just give it everything you have. And honestly, I'm proud to say that I feel like I've done that up to this point, um and it's, I would just say, like, just keep doing that. Like, it's gonna work out in the end if you keep doing that, so just stick with it. I promise you it's gonna be okay. That's kind of what I would think.
Couldn't agree more, man. I always try to say to myself, not only everything happens for a reason, but everything happens for you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Especially in those lower points, it's like, why is this happening to me? It's like, why is this happening for me? So
Yeah.
I think that's all great perspective. And I really appreciate you taking the time. It was great
Yeah.
getting to know you.
Thanks.
Thanks, man. I hope that you did enjoy my conversation with Alan and got a little bit of a better understanding on the ins and outs of the mental side of being a minor league baseball player and how you really have to not compare yourself to others and practice that art of patience, because, it's out of their control. It's the managers, it's the general managers, it's more of the higher organization of the major league team on if they get caught up or not. And all they can really do is, focus on what they can control. And it was also interesting to hear about Alan's thoughts about superstitions as well, because you think about a lot of times with athletes all throughout their life, they, have these subconscious superstitions that they do, whether how many times that they, tap home plate, what they do with their batting gloves. Nomar had his whole thing with his batting gloves that kind of made him famous, but it's really interesting to think of how, not allowing those superstitions in to make you overthink on how that's going to dictate your performance, or if you have to change something up in terms of your stance, your swing, on how that could really sort of screw up those routines and those superstitions that you've built up throughout your time playing the sport. And I think the more and more that we can learn about these behind the scenes or ins and outs of the mental side that not a lot of people really think about in terms of sports, it really opens up our perspective and gives us a different outlook on how to not only look at the sport, but these athletes that we're watching, that we're supporting. But I hope you're able to gain that from this conversation. And if you want to hear more conversations just like this one, you can go over to Iggy Sports Talk, whether it's on Apple and Spotify, but also I post the video version and other clips over on YouTube. You can subscribe over there, but you can also check out more updates regarding the podcast and other clips, not only from these episodes, but also from around the sports world that really looks at the deeper aspects of sports. It's at Iggy Sports Talk. But as always, I greatly appreciate everybody tuning in. I'll see you and talk to you next time. Peace.